What's your sole purpose? It's what you came here to accomplish. It's also who you're meant to become so that you can make an impact by being yourself. We're all here to unlock our potential and create positive change in the world. Everything starts with you. One is not born into their purpose. One steps into their purpose. Were you born to do it? Let's find out together. Welcome to Born to Do It, a podcast about the positive change makers around us. Today, we're going to be very mindful of the choices we're making and examine the career path of neuroscience-based mindfulness coach Niki Vinogradoff. Did I say that right?
Wow, that's like 10 points. That's super rare though, that somebody gets it right. So
It's my Bulgarian
well,
heritage here.
yeah, I was guessing.
How are you doing, Niki?
I'm good. Had a lot of long runs in the past days, and just our daughter came home. I said hi to her, and really looking forward to seeing where we will wander and explore today. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. You do a lot of sessions, like you lead a lot of sessions. So you usually start with mindfulness exercises. How much are you in the seat of on the receiving end of, being the guest in sessions or being the guest in podcasts?
Less than I would like to.
Okay.
No, I really enjoy podcast. Really, because you get to explore new things. I always want to challenge myself. I don't want to prepare in any way for podcast. Somebody to lead me, let's say, in a session. That's very well. I have my mentor coach, and I had my teacher for 16 years, so I have had my fair share. But all that to say, it's really nice to be on this side of things.
On this side. I love that. So your journey is multifaceted, and we've had a chance to have a couple of conversations, and I'm sure there are so many treasures buried for us to uncover. But my first question naturally is, what is mindfulness? It's been a key word for many people in the last decade, more so than ever, thanks to social media. But I feel like the word just bounces off our monkey brains more often than not, and it doesn't actually, slow us down to the point where we can be aware of everything that's happening. So how would you
Yes.
explain it?
Well, first of all, it's so much like that you actually asked that question, because the world, or let's say our feeds, are full of words that are so important that we are so used to them, and people speak from not having experience, use the words that they lose their meaning. So mindset is another one. Like, it doesn't mean, most people, if you ask how, when you talk about mindset, what do you mean by it, most people wouldn't know. Very much the same thing with mindfulness. So let me share of how usually, in my observation, how people understand or talk about mindfulness, and why I personally wouldn't approach it that way, and then what I think is a really good way to understand mindfulness. So the most common way to understand, the usual explanation or understanding that people have is that it's a tool or a method. Let me just put a full screen. That it's a tool or a method that you, for example, use when you are stressed. That's the most common kind of idea about it. It's almost like if that's the approach, it's almost like going to a movie theater with amazingly beautiful screen and the best loudspeakers, and then watching the movie on your phone screen. That's kind of how I would say, if we think about it from the perspective of, if you think about a perspective of just a method. So it's a good way to think about it actually on three directly connected aspects, which is view, you could say mindset, or perception, or way we understand things. And then in the middle is actually the method, the meditation part, the tools. And here is then action. Like, when all these things come together, then we can start experiencing life in a way that we feel deeply anchored in our body, and the body feels really good and in peace, and the mind is very clear, and we can be kind of in flow and spontaneous, because we are aware of great ideas, thoughts, perceptions, and we are aware of the thoughts and perception we don't want to engage in, and then we can use our body and our speech in a most let's say positive, best possible, most beneficial way for others. So mm, that's how I would approach those three. Like we can use them so that we can that's we can maybe a good way to think about it is mindfulness is that we are engaged in those three areas so that we can live from flow, and yet even flow 2 point, flow 3 point, flow 7.0. Feel free to ask more, but that's how I would approach it as a totality, not as a method.
I love that you're adding different perspectives to it. So it's not just one thing. And it's almost like this awareness of your immediate environment, which is outside of you,
Hmm.
but also your awareness of what's happening in your body.
Yes.
And then also awareness of what's happening in here. Because what's
Yes.
happening in your body might be completely different than the flow of thoughts that are kind of like always on. And one of the ideas, where it's not even an idea, it's proven that entropy is the natural state of your thoughts. And
Hmm.
that blew me away. Like that understanding that my mind is always meant to be chaos. I'm the one
Yes.
that's meant to bring that awareness to the chaos. And from that point forward, the chaos does not affect me anymore.
Mm.
Because your mind is always meant to receive these thoughts, but you're not meant to be always
Yes.
affected by them. So,
And it's really good that you are mentioning that because I used to live in Buddhist meditation center and I taught meditation to business owners. And now I I wouldn't say I teach meditation. I wouldn't say it in that way. But let's say why I'm mentioning those, that in all of those, the most common thing is, Niki, I started meditating. I have so much thoughts.
mhm.
Like I'm really bad meditator. And always that's one of the biggest misconceptions kind of I will use mindfulness tools to get rid of my thoughts, but really it's not about the thoughts, it's about the relationship we have with the thoughts. You use the word chaos. Can I pull something really creative and something really clear from the chaos?
Mm. And where is the chaos taking me? If it's like a stream, it's if it's a flow in its own, it's trying
Mhm.
to take you somewhere. It's not random.
Yeah, yes, there's all kinds of streams going on, and
Mhm.
then which one are we following, and can I follow them in the way that I'm aware and not lost in it? Like we kind of, let's say, we wake up in the morning and then we think, oh, how did, like, I had a tree and it felt so real, how did I react to it? And then what would be really worth is exploring how much that happens actually during the day. Like literally it's not uncommon to meet a person who's like, this really annoying, like my boss 3 weeks ago said this thing, which is kind of understandably, but the person is still in the same dream
Mhm. Yeah.
of
And we do that with our family, with our friends. We carry the weight of maybe somebody said something rude, inconsiderate, or somebody said something that actually made us question their motives. And we carry that instead of actually writing it down in a journal, letting it go, or
yes,
asking the person directly using our communication skills. But
yes.
it's
And that's kind
usually
of and that's kind of, we could say, if we look at let's say on the level, if we look at it on the level of tools or approaches, when that's going on inside us, the first level would be at least, okay, I'm not going to react to this. I can see I'm really
Mhm,
annoyed and angry. Like I'm not going to spit it out back into the world. Let me understand it. Second level is more like we are really, okay, I know I've been here before. I'll be annoyed for a while, but I don't need to, it will come and go. And when we meditate and use the methods, and let's say there's really kind of also how to live in the way that we can be in peace, then we can start noticing it, that emotions and reactions really are energy that arise, flow through the body. If we can allow them to flow through the body, we know this will have a lot more energy. And I remember one of I remember the moment where I really had the first direct experience of this is a long time ago. I was running and it was a bit dark, and I was running past this fence, and all there was this huge dog jumped on the fence, and my body, of course, went like adrenaline rush, and it was interesting to observe like how angry I got to the dog. This is already at the point where I had meditated for 5 years, but in that moment I just relaxed, and the energy that I got from the adrenaline, instead of like we are live, so I'm not going to curse, but beef, that dog, and all that stuff. Instead, it was just okay, and how much energy I gained from that. So why I was also saying that we can all observe and see that these things are really actually how we function.
I love this. If mindfulness can be perceived as a tool to help us to observe a little bit more and to view ourselves as separate, always interconnected with everything, but also
Mm,
separate. We're not
mm,
the immediate emotions, we're not the immediate thoughts. We're separate.
yes.
We're meant to choose what to do with those.
Yes, and fun and paradoxically, to be fully engaged with it, it's almost like I probably movie metaphors come to my mind because I know you like movies. So it's almost like being in a movie theater and fully engaged, like fully in the movie, and yet being aware that I am in a movie theater.
You're
So
watching the
similarly in
screen.
life, like they are fully engaged with what's happening, and at the same time, they are not trapped in it.
And nothing can happen to you as well in that
Yeah.
movie scene as well. Even if
Yes,
it feels like the
even when it
most
sometimes
perfect horror
feels
movie.
exactly.
So you mentioned the your experience in a Buddhist monastery,
A meditation center.
meditation
That's
center.
important because I never was a monk, and I don't mind that people think that people would think that I'm monk, but it's not true. So I don't want what I want people to know that I lived there. I was a lay Buddhist, let's say yogi Buddhist, but I was never a monk.
I'm curious, was spirituality always an interest of yours, or was that almost like an invitation from the universe? Hey, do you want to try this? Do you want to join this place? Do you want to meet these people? And you were like, okay, let's follow this side quest. Let's take this opportunity.
It was always there, and in some way I never became in a sense that, oh, this is spiritual, that even to this day, even right now, I'm present, I'm seeing what arises, doing my best to be aware and share the things that have the most energy, and then speak it in clear way, and I don't consider whether it's spiritual or not spiritual, but I had from very very early on, probably after not just probably, but there's this specific moment when my great grandfather died, and I was born into a Christian Orthodox family, which in the funeral, the casket is open, so you see the body. And I was 3 years old, and there's a tradition you need to kiss the forehead of the
Mm.
deceased. And my grandpa lifted me up, and I remember like it was like as a 3 year old, it was really, really, I didn't want to do it. I did it, but I remember that moment so clearly. I was just, I don't want to do this. And
Mhm.
then after that, many weeks, I don't know how I can remember it. Maybe it was so strong emotionally, but I was realizing that my parents will die. So I kind of recognized we will die very early on. And then already on fourth grade, it was very clear to me that, well, like, what are we doing here, learning all this stuff, but and then I was looking at adults. Well, they don't really seem to know what to do and who they really are. So I wasn't very convinced about the story of like study hard and work hard, and then whatever happens after that. And so that was always there. Questions: what are we, who are we, whatever. Then I only had access to Bible, didn't really make much sense, and there was some really cool stuff there, but a lot of it was like, well, I
Mhm.
cannot force myself to believe in this. Even I was praying, and I would say I had a relationship with God or something bigger. uh to make this make the not to tell my whole life story, but basically from especially from 12 years old to 17 years old, it was more of like I was thinking about it. But in 17 years old, I started reading a lot. Really there was no YouTube or anything like that back then. I was reading a lot of spirituality. Then with from Jung, so Jungian psychology, science got into it, and eventually, when I was 24, I had really gone locked into Buddhism. Especially there was this quote from Buddha that don't believe a word I say, but be your own guiding light, which was like, oh, not only Buddhism makes sense to me, but it really wants to deliver real experiences, and it's not asking me to believe into anything. And then my best friend back then had went into this Buddhist meditation center and was trying to get me there for many months, but I was like, I can do all this myself. I'll just get enlightened by myself. I don't need any of that. It's very typical attitude to me. But I always eventually kind of recognize my limitations. So eventually I went there, and it was instant. It was like coming home. It was like instant recognition. This was, the moment in my life where the seeking did end.
Moment of belonging.
Yes, to some, not to to that also, but
To self.
to self, to like, yes, there is aspect or deeper essence of me that is beyond all this. That is beyond. What would be a good way to describe it? That maybe I'll just put it that it simply is. It's so strongly present, and it feels like home, and there's nothing else that's why we are probably all longing for it. I would say all humans have this longing for, like, there's something that's missing, and I would say that's that disappeared.
That awareness that you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Mm,
You are exactly who you're supposed to be. There's
yes.
nothing wrong with the present moment, with your journey. But I am curious, did you find why we're here in that moment? Like, was there like an awareness, oh, this is why I'm here? Or did you just embrace the present moment? You realized what I need to know will be revealed when I need to know it. I don't need
I
to.
would say what a question. I would say from my deepest experiences, uh, we are here to create from joy, from love, from compassion. There's from my I might be, nobody needs to believe me, but I would say there is no like, this is exactly like, here's exactly your destiny. I mean, we do have our qualities, our energy, and our place, our connections in the world. I don't know, like, there's no like a lot of my clients come to me and they're like, look, I'm looking for my purpose, and the most common and unconscious idea is that, like, somewhere it's hidden, like there's somewhere this scroll of old paper that says, Niki, here's your purpose,
Mhm.
do this and do that. But it's more like such a vast, deep experience of spaciousness and love, so vast, so deep that there's like no denying it. And then it's almost like, well, if this is what I am, this is who we are. What else to do than to do our best to make everybody recognize that, but not in the what doesn't definitely work is like, hey, you are already enlightened, and I have done my best to find ways to basically, I don't know if I would use the word help or mirror and maybe point to, like, look how amazing you are, and that there's so much unnecessary suffering going on. And maybe that's in this, we all have our paths, but probably essentially is we are to alleviate suffering and help people to connect with joy. And it's a lot more than joy. It's like flow times million.
It's a good way to look at it, though, to create from joy, from all the positive states of being, which are quite high if you look at the
Mm,
frequency scale. But I think coaches in particular, they have a role in in the grand scheme of things to remind people that they shouldn't deny the negative experiences, the negative emotions, but they should not be
mm,
defined by them.
yes.
We're here to understand that pain has a role to play, grief has a role to play, but not get stuck there and keep
Mm,
elevating to creating from the joy. Because when
yes,
you're creating from the joy, you're creating from your purpose. Joy
yes,
is synonymous from that.
yes. That's really important. That's what, for example, in Buddhism, and I would say in any healthy system, all experiences, all emotions are integrated. They are not problems. There's even kind of this expression in Buddhism called one taste, where, like, let's say joy and pain are, there's no,
The duality.
there's just different uh, energies. But and I love this quote from Jung, where he says, "The tree that grows into heaven has its roots all the way down in hell."
Mhm.
And that's another thing, whether it's spirituality or mindfulness. I think pretty much all of us go through a stage. Many unfortunately get stuck. I think get stuck in there if they don't have a teacher or some experienced guidance. That's just my observation. And it becomes so easily that when I really get into the mindfulness and I meditate like crazy or get into some spirituality, then all the problems will disappear. And it just creates so much frustration.
Mhm.
Because really, and sometimes I ask this super simple on purpose, like I call it like a stupid question. So I'd ask the client, so okay, so what is the problem actually with this? And very often it's kind of, yeah, I don't know actually. What is the problem? Maybe there isn't a problem with this thing.
Maybe I'm just used to finding a problem because
Mm,
society has told me there has to be
yeah,
a problem.
yes.
Well, you mentioned that you don't really subscribe to the idea of working hard and studying hard and, just being this mindless slave to the system, as I like to use those words. But you kind of found yourself on this scientific path with neuroscience.
Hmm.
So, who are some of your biggest influences and who can we trust when it comes to the science a little bit more than the spirituality? Who are science-based teachers that more people should turn to for guidance?
We ourselves. And that's really, it's kind of kind of a corny answer, but I'll expand on it a bit. So, and why do I think that it's so? I didn't go to science and spirituality. If we use these terms as we are speaking, I went really the other way around: spirituality, and then science as an interesting thing, and especially as a good tool, good way to communicate to people how we function, good kind of finding out what are the, let's say, practices from spirituality have been used for 2,000-3,000 years and now are clearly confirmed their benefits. So this is one of my ways of getting closer to people. Like, people who work with me, they don't need to believe into anything. They don't need to be spiritual. Funnily enough, almost everybody ends up there, even when I don't try. But so no matter how deep we are in spirituality, it's extremely, in my view, useful to understand how our body and our brain work on the level of survival. Gets a really bad rep
Mhm.
because, like, we're not going to get anywhere if we don't survive. So it's not like because people talk about this, yeah, survival mode. That's one. That's another thing, to be constantly like on the lookout. But to understand that, I'll give an example. So actually, this is a funny example. So I was a few weeks ago in a store, and there was a cheese discount. So there was a cheese on discount, and there was actually plenty of it. And yet I was just aware that there's this man before me taking a lot of the cheese, and in my mind this was like the impulse was almost to tackle him and take the cheese, and I was laughing about it. And what could have been very easy to be like, oh, what a, like, am I crazy, like, what a bad person I am to think like that. But that's one of the examples to understand, well, that's just my body and brain thinking. We are still in the savannah. and there are those fruits. If I don't eat the fruits now, I might not eat them ever because they get rotten. The monkeys will eat them. Hi, George. The monkeys will eat them, or the other people will eat them, and I will die if I don't eat them. So I really better eat them. And we have that's one of the many examples of if we understand that almost all of our negative and limiting impulses have nothing to do with us. It's not a personal thing. It's simply our body and brain reacting automatically. If it wouldn't, if our body and mind wouldn't react in that way, we would die very quickly. And then the thing is, let's say with mindfulness, is that we can those parts of the brain become actually servants to the frontal lobe and neocortex. So all kind of that to say, or we could talk hours about this, but it's very useful to understand how our body and brain works from neuroscience perspective because it gives us a relief. Also, it can give us scary motivation when it comes to stress. 77%, depending where you look at the statistics, 77% of adults live with chronic anxiety and stress. And that's, if it was other way around, 20% live in stress, 77 and not, we would see like, whoa, we really need to help those people because stress really distorts our experience of life. But because it's normal, it has become normal, we don't recognize that how destructive it is. I'm using the word very consciously. It is destructive to our life to be under stress. So even that is kind of good to understand from science perspective. And then finally answering your question. So it's not a, I really like Andre Huberman, especially because he brings a lot of guests that are like, they have their founding in peer-reviewed science. Anna Lemke is really cool, but there's a lot of neuroscientists that study different parts of the brain. And still, I would say that the best thing we can do is when we listen to the science and when we study it, still to have a scientific approach towards ourselves and observe. Like, okay, if I do this, if I judge people, if I allow myself to ruminate in anger, what's my energy and how do I feel? If I take the effort to like, okay, part of me might be judging this other person, but if I breathe in and understand why they might be behaving in that way, and maybe even wish them something good, does that change the way I'm feeling and my energy? And if yes, and if it happens 10 times, then probably that works. So similar, I mean, you probably have noticed it's basically like when it comes to nutrition and all that stuff, eat bread or this will happen. Never eat bread. Don't even take a spoon of sugar. You can eat sugar, no problem. Are you using seed oils? You will die. Actually, seed oils, no problem. Use butter. No, don't use butter. So it's really, I think, good to observe how things work for us. Like that's why I said the best scientist to trust is our own experience.
Well, I studied journalism and we were told these are some of the tactics, otherwise it wouldn't be newsworthy, especially online. You have a lot of clickbait articles.
Yes.
The article is not written by someone who's done the research. They're just trying to get traffic to the website, to the platforms, to the social media,
Yes.
because their race is dependent on how many people they bring to the platforms, which is where the corruption, or rather the corrupted idea of what success looks like and feels like.
I'm listening. I'm just taking. Please continue. I'll just. No.
One thing that I witnessed just before our conversation was kind of this video captured where a woman was calling in to this radio station where a person is helping people with all kinds of mental problems. She was like, my anxiety is off the charts. I think my husband is lying. I think my husband is cheating. I'm probably overplaying it in my head. I don't know what to do, but my anxiety is off the charts. And she started listing examples, and the person is like listening to her. She's like, your anxiety is not playing a trick on you. Your anxiety is doing exactly what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
It's your intuition. So how much is intuition actually examined by neuroscience? Because I feel like neuroscience, or sciences in particular, they're
Mhm,
trying to help us bring some order to the chaos by, you got to wake up early, you got to go for your daily walk. So all of these
mhm,
things that are helping us physically.
mhm,
But then when it comes to the intuition and these things that we cannot really explain, how do we know these
mhm.
things?
Yes.
Society keeps feeding us, don't trust your intuition. And I feel
Mm,
like us suppressing that intuition is why we're suffering so much.
mhm. Intuition, what a topic. I'll share from science and then what I think about it. Also, forgive me. The reason why I was just looking if one of my books that I can recommend was there. It's called The Brain, The Story of You, which is, as a side note, it's really good for people who are spiritually oriented or who believe like me. I don't just believe, I say I know that we are way beyond our body and brain. It's still sometimes useful to read something that is written by neuroscientists who's like, we are the brain, that's it. There's a lot of good stuff there, and it also helps us, this is really a side note kind of thing, helps us to see where do we who know or believe or wish that we are beyond our brain, where do I still have areas where I haven't actually looked into, like if it bothers us a lot that somebody says consciousness created by our brain, then one part of us is not very convinced that it might not be true. Maybe it is true. So so intuition is something that has been recently especially researched, and there's really uh, cool not just way to think about it, but what actually happens. So we can talk a little bit about intuition that comes from, I would say, experience, then probably from emotion, and then what is beyond that.
Mhm.
So uh, if you are, let's say, heart surgeon, like that kind of doctor, and you've been for 20 years studying, doing, gathering experience, you're gathering so much information and experience that the brain is literally going to send neurons all the way into the gut. And how this then manifests itself is that doctor sees a potential patient and nobody knows what's going on with them, and that doctor is like, this is probably what's going on, and they are often right. And how were you right? Well, I just knew. And what in that case happens is the experience gets accessed and the totality gets accessed in a super fast way, in kind of from the subconscious level. So
Mhm.
that kind of intuition, I think, also observing other humans, we get very good at spotting patterns, and that's one aspect of intuition. I think that let's we can use the word spiritual. I think the spiritual aspect of intuition is that we are so relaxed and yet so present that we are connected to the whole collective. And whatever it is, like it's a collective intuition or whatever call it, universe, God, is we are actually we are doing things and not we are doing things that actually benefits the totality. That's the kind of intuition where I would say we are connected to everything, and then from there we know what to actually do and what not to do, even when it doesn't make sense for the ego. It can be, and this is also interesting thing is that sometimes we have these intuitive moments where it doesn't make sense to us and somehow we follow it, and then we could be, well, nothing happened. Maybe that's exactly what that maybe that's exactly the thing. Nothing happened. You didn't get hit by a car because you had this weird intuition that today, for some strange reason, I'll walk from here even though I never do it. But
Yeah.
maybe that's the reason nothing bad happened to you. So there's also that aspect where it's difficult to confirm that what are intuition, but you don't know what didn't what bad things didn't
Mhm.
happen to you.
Yeah, and I always listen to my intuition, even if it doesn't make sense, because it's
Mm,
proven to me that, well, first of all, it's kept me safe for 31 years, but
yes.
it's given me access to opportunities that might have been scary at first, might have been, a little bit unknown in the beginning, but I trusted because
Yes.
it just felt like inner knowing. That's the best way to describe it.
Yes, inner knowing.
If it feels like, oh, that's already familiar, I'm going to trust it. And
Yes.
one of the things that happens when we listen to our intuition as well is, especially in the spectrum of mindfulness, because we're aware of what's happening, is when we have been friends with someone for a very long time, or we have
Mhm.
known someone for a very long time, and overnight there is a shift, and you
Mm.
cannot ignore that shift. Something's
Yes.
shifted. Some people call that quantum jumping. So you might have jumped timelines. You're in a brand new timeline. You're not meant to continue the journey forward with this person, or so maybe that person betrayed you. You don't know that. You just feel
Mm.
something shifted, and your inner
Mm.
guidance is saying to you, take your distance.
Yes.
There's no further explanation. You just have to trust that, because your intuition is part of your primitive system that's trying to keep you safe, but it's also part of your evolved system that's
Mhm.
trying to help you to communicate with that
Yes.
which we cannot explain or see.
And I think in mindfulness context is we are learning to, like you said, observe the inner knowing. And my sense about this, or the metaphor, the image that I always share with others, is when they ask like how to trust it. Or in some way, we can only point to people or give them some sense of how they might recognize what is there, what is actually the authentic. But I would say it's always connected with peace. Even when it's complete turmoil, even if it's scary, it has this sense of peace. And the image that I always get is like you go in this room full of people, and there's people selling this, doing this, speaking loud, and the inner knowing is the person who's standing in the room looking at you and just saying it with a steady, normal voice. It's like not trying to impress you, not try to manipulate you, not try to. It's just there, like, hey, do this, don't do
Mm.
this, and it's not even if you don't do it. It's like, well, you don't need to. It's not even trying to convince us.
Yeah. It's that belonging once again. It's the
Mm.
belonging to self, but you feel it towards somebody else. And it
Yeah.
still might be an
Mm.
aspect of you that you're seeing, to
Yeah.
use their
Mm.
metaphor. But
Yes.
so you've gone on quite the journey when it comes to exploring mindfulness and teaching mindfulness, which has kind of opened up this new path for you, which is the teacher's path or the teacher's perspective. What is it that you want everybody to know about mindfulness? If you could impact the world with this one focus, what would it be?
Yeah, if I would only can say like few
Or no?
sentences.
How would you
It,
how would you like people to connect your name 50 years from today?
oh, so it's the question of like something like if I could get people to teach one thing, or if I would wish people understand or learn one thing, or like what would that be?
However you interpret the question, I'm gonna
Yes.
read
Okay.
that
I'll.
question.
Okay. I'll say six things, and I'll go with. Let's see how I go about this. With
Okay.
this, I think. The motivation or sense or intuition people have when they get interested about mindfulness is really worth being aware of, because it's really probably saying something about there's something more in me, there's peace, there's something beyond this experience. Because what else would it be? Like what's driving me to be? How did I become? Why am I interested about these things? And to know that all that it promises is true, that it's possible to all of us, because it's not a method in a sense. Like we are in the West, we are overly reliant or obsessed with this idea that there's some kind of how to do something and this will happen. That's really not how life works. Like there's people are saying things like, hey, here's a hack how you can drink water and hydrate yourself. But it's like, no, it's not a hack. It works because that's how your body actually works. And so similarly, mindfulness is really like, from for example, in Tibetan the word for meditation is gomlung, and it literally means to become familiar with. So to understand that when we go into mindfulness, what we are really doing is we are becoming familiar with what we are, not just who, but what. Those are two layers, but what and who we are. And why that's so important to understand it in that way, we are not creating anything new. We are not making this huge effort of like, now I'm going to be better at meditation. Now my ego will come here and create another performance. Now I'm really good at mindfulness. Now I'm really like, I feel really bad I didn't meditate enough today. It just becomes another, like a chore, another performance. So even understanding that is already, if you can really understand, it's actually we're becoming familiar with what and who we are. And I often emphasize this with clients, is especially if they come to the discovery session, especially if they are really stressed and they meet me for the first time, I always ask if they would want to do a visualization, and I ask them to know, like, how are you feeling right now? And so what are you really feeling? And then I ask them, like, note that down, and then we do a meditation, and then I ask them, like, well, how are you feeling now? And like, wow, I feel so much better. I feel really peace, and I feel this energy, and feels like I'm back to being me. And I emphasize that, it's not because of the meditation. It's not because of me. It's because we remove the clouds out of the way. We actually allowed things to settle, and this is the natural state. You didn't do anything special. So that's a long answer just to the first step, which is basically to understand that that's what we are. We're not there to perform. And then it's good to look at mindfulness as totality of our whole life. So, for example, if we don't have a strong vision for life, this consciousness on who I want to be, what do I want for others, what do I want to create, then the default mode of our perception and how our brain will actually interpret the world. And even because we are always living through an interpretation, if that wasn't the case, we would go crazy because we would experience everything at once, but everything would be just a fact and or an object. Like, even when we look at let's say, I know I'm a little bit going all over the place with this answer, but if we are like, let's say we feel cold. You're walking outside and it's cold, and then we see our home like 100 meters away, and it's warm there. So now it's not a home; it's a place where the body can again feel good. Or what? If we are not cold, or we are just feeling perfectly fine, maybe the home, when we see it, is just a place where we will go. Why I'm saying this is everything we experience, literally everything, every word, every thought, every connection, every object appears to us in the context of our vision for life. So if we don't have a conscious vision, our brain will offer us a default mode vision, which is, I want to hold on to what's comfortable, and I want to push away things that don't feel good to me. And then everything we experience appears in such a short-term limiting way. I promised myself to go for a run. It's raining. Well, I'll just stay home because it's comfortable. Then we feel bad because we broke a promise for ourselves. But if we have a very clear vision who we want to be, and those things are already said. For example, if let's use that running and the rain. If our vision is, well, I want to be a person who keeps promises to myself. I want to be resilient because I want to be inspiring to others because X, Y, and Z. Then the rain actually really appears to us as an opportunity, not just in a cliche way, but it's like, hey, cool, now I get to practice my resilience. And vision is directly connected to dopamine. And because dopamine is not what would I say, the myth about dopamine is that it's a chemical of pleasure. It's not. It's literally the neurotransmitter of journey. It's like, whoa, I'm going there, I'm exploring this, I'm like discovering these things. And if we get those, if we get that already right, if we just manage to create a vision for our life, which asks for a little bit of self-exploration or a lot, uh, already then we will be in such a better place. It's much easier to be mindful because we actually want to be present in life. Actually, things appear to us as meaningful. We could go a lot further, but let me stop there. What I basically said is we already, the cliche that we already are what we need to be is absolutely true. And that probably the most important aspect of mindfulness is to have some vision for life.
Hmm. Mindfulness allows us to stop performing and rather live life as who we are, who we
Yes,
truly are. And it removes the layers and the armors and the coping mechanisms and the dysfunctional patterns because it allows us to just breathe as who we are, who we
yes,
came here to be, and who we've become in the process.
yes.
And I love this awareness as to what we are and who we are. Two different things,
Mm,
as you mentioned. And the more we know how the body functions, the more we understand the machinery, the what versus who. And who is actually more embodied in the emotions.
mm,
And as you were talking about that, like if we were to remove, oh, I'm feeling cold, I'm feeling hot, I'm feeling sad. If we were to remove that, everything's just going to be a little bit monotonous and just kind of
yes.
plain and boring.
Yes, and I would go say even that the what we are is the observer of it all. That even the body
Mhm.
appears inside that, and reason, and it's in some ways it's really strange that we literally know that okay, this bug does these kind of things during winter to survive under the snow. We know such details, and yet we very rarely ask, so what is it that is experiencing all of this? How is it even possible that being like experience exists? And that's what we are truly want to become familiar with from spiritual perspective. Like, what is that? Whatever we call it, enlightened consciousness, higher self, soul. That's what we really want to become
Yeah.
familiar with. And yeah, uh, one more thing about the because you mentioned about the hard working and being relaxed is when I work with companies and they are kind of like they are in this fence of like, well, do we really want to create this like relaxed atmosphere? There's two beliefs there. The other belief is relaxed is lazy, and then the other belief is that stress makes you get things
Mhm.
done, which is really so like uninformed belief. So I always show them two brains, and so this is stress brain. Like when the neurons are firing, it's all over the place. And when you have a relaxed brain, it's like an umbrella from above, like it's all is connected. And stress brain, the blood has actually flows into the reptile brain and into our extremities.
Survival.
Yes, and that if that's our chronic state, we don't have a lot of energy. We literally can't be empathetic because we are worried about ourselves. The world appears from when we are stressed. The world appears as a way out of the trouble, source of trouble, something to be ignored. So when you have, for example, leader at work pushing and pushing their team, they don't see that there's people. They just see that these people need to get these things done, or I will get crap from my boss. So but when we are relaxed, the blood flows into frontal lobe. We can be empathetic. Also, we can be creative.
Mhm.
Like everybody who's been in the flow state knows that you cannot be stressed and in the flow state. And in flow
Or
states,
release. Yeah.
yeah, unless uh, actually if this is meaningful to me and I want to do it, it's a bit scary. I'm stressed, but it's called eustress, which is there's so much more dopamine than stress that the stress actually gets the negative impact of cortisol gets blocked by
Yeah.
dopamine, which is really cool. Uh, but we are really good at problem solving. We can think in big picture and detail at the same time, while stress literally narrows even our pupils, however you say this. They get narrowed down because I'm running away from a lion. I really don't care what I see there. I just want to see what I see in front of me.
Mhm.
So that's like there's no better, there's no more convincing reason of why to approach things from relaxed, and notice that when we are relaxed, we are energized, we are sharp, we want to do things. And stress is just us like, let me just drag myself through here.
Creative problem solving. This is a key word here. When we are relaxed, we can innovate in ways that we
Yes.
cannot when we're stressed. And unfortunately, I've seen what you described, not just in the workplaces, but also in schools. And what's
Yeah.
worse, when it
Yeah.
comes to raising children, I've seen a lot of, at this point, a lot of creators online. They're saying, well, I want my children to suffer a little bit because I did and I turned out well and I had the opportunity to develop this skill and that skill, but they're basing that to, a very distorted lens of
Yes.
struggle made me the resilient person that I am, and I need to give
Exactly.
my duty to give that struggle to my children now,
And
which is
when you look into what does well mean, it's
mhm.
things might start falling apart a bit.
Yeah, and mental health, which we cannot see, but it starts to
Mm.
manifest as certain conditions in the body.
Mm.
But as we're transitioning from the teacher path to the student path,
Mm.
I want to ask you more of an open-minded question as to now
Mm.
that you know what you know when it comes to living,
Mm.
when it comes to consequences, being mindful, not being mindful, doing things that take you away from mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to experience? And what would you like to encourage people to experience more of and less of? And one
Mm.
example that comes to mind, for example, is alcohol. And, a lot of people, especially
Mm.
when they're at the start of their career, they feel the pressure to go onto these
Yeah.
company parties or university parties and get drunk, which we
Mm.
know has long-term impacts on our nervous system, mental
Mm-hmm.
health, and so on. So,
Yes.
as a student of life, what would you like to experience more of? Now,
Continuous curiosity, like that's my favorite thing, the curiosity of even further ideas. Just yesterday I saw a quote which I already forgot, but I will look into it because I know where the quote is, but I was like, whoa, I never thought about it like that way. Finding more and more people who what would I, it's such a corny thing to say, think from different perspectives, but who are also excited about life and who are curious. I still very much see myself as a student when it, especially when it comes to, let's say, spiritual path. Uh, Not a seeker, but still in this, I really love the student mindset, like the rookie mindset,
mhm,
because it brings this freshness to the freshness to, in the beginning when we start something excited, we are I think the reason we are learning so much and why it's so exciting, because we don't have a strong we are not very stuck in things that you already know. So I keep that a lot also for me as a, I keep that for myself as a coach. Like when people say ridiculous thing like you're already legend as a coach, I'm like, come on, no way. Like I'm legend if I've done this successfully 40 years. We can then talk about that. My teacher would often say, if you meditate every day 1 or 2 hours for 20 years, that's a good beginning. So that's what I want to more and more experience in life, is this freshness, and just I think it comes also, it's gratitude and humility. Like there's so many people all the time doing things that directly impact my life positively. I would not, if there wasn't plumbers or electricians, I would like not survive. Well, maybe I would, but to expand this gratitude of like how I recently wrote on. I'm really going in free flow of all the things I want to experience more. It sounds like it's more like expansion of things that I'm already experienced. That's probably a good way to say it. Uh, I wrote an article called open letter to humankind, why I think we aren't evil and why that matters. And it is so important, I think, to be in awe or amazed about us humans. I mean, sometimes I just, for example, I remember one day in summer, I was looking at the houses of the neighbors, like from cave to this,
Mhm.
like every single small detail, how to use the wood, how to build a roof, like the amount of energy, effort, and sacrifice it has gone to that we can live the way we are living, while at the same time realizing, well, many things we need to, especially internally, work on. We are kind of like our external development is here, our internal development, like in some way, externally, we are like uh, stable senior citizens. But I think as humankind internally, we are like, did we learn to walk, or are we just like early teenagers somewhere around there? But still being amazed about it. So what I would want to more experience is just the expansion of gratitude and curiosity and awe. And that you can ask if there's some very specific things, like I want to travel with my daughter to Japan and do all the Pokemon and anime stuff. And so there are, and small experiences in daily life, what I really like to introduce, whether it's just okay, today instead of walking from there, I will walk from there.
Mhm.
Like really
Different part of the
small.
house.
Yeah, yeah.
I am
So,
curious though, because when we talk about mindfulness, it's usually you can download the app, put your headphones on, and
mm,
just relax, speak to your coach, speak to a mentor,
yes.
even go to an event. But it's very much mindfulness is experienced in solitude in society,
Mm,
almost like that's the idea. Can we experience mindfulness with other people, with our best friend, with our partner, with our
yes.
children, with our parents? Maybe we want to bring them closer to living in more peace, even
Mm,
though there's going to be a bit of resistance because
yeah.
they like their
My,
way.
my teacher would often say, if you think you're in light, then spend 3 weeks with your parents and you'll see.
Mhm.
But yes, even right now, both you and me, the people who are watching, listening, whether it's live or in podcast, they can be fully like present in their body, start noticing and feeling that, oh, when I'm aware in my body, it feels really good. We can notice that there's this flow of clear thoughts, clear perceptions arising, and they kind of go through this clarity filter and this truth filter. They go through different chakras that add things to it or remove things from it, and then it comes out as a speech and so on. That is possible in anywhere with anyone. Still, you are, I would say, very much right, especially in the beginning, whatever the beginning is, year or 5 or 10 or 15 years, or 20 or more. Uh, it's good to treat meditation, really understand this like a gym and laboratory for the mind. So laboratory because you're really looking, you're in meditation, and you're really like becoming present, noticing like, oh, I didn't know that I think like that. And even started in deeper level noticing how the ego or the identity is formed, that it's actually not a solid thing, but even that forms itself. And then that quality, that ability to observe is translated into every situation. And then why do I say gym is because the mind has awareness and energy just like body has, and we can develop like really stable, strong, energetic mind. We do know that meditators have a part of the brain called ACC is more developed, especially through the years. It's called anterior cingulate cortex, and it is our mental strength muscle literally in the brain. It's the one that is like, okay, mm, doing this, I'm doing this work, I'm speaking with this person, and there's something super attractive there, or something very annoying or disturbing there. When we meditated long enough, we still can be here. With the
In the
mind
middle.
doesn't, the attention doesn't get sucked into it. It can be aware of it.
Mm.
So when and that's difficult that's very difficult to develop with while being with others. So that's why it's like just like with gym, when we go to gym, we can do more with our muscles. When we explore things in laboratory, we can bring the ideas and knowledge and the awareness into the world. So that's how I would treat it. And that's why the view meditation and action as a totality is very useful, because what happens often to all of us when we get really dedicated to meditation or mindfulness is we only see meditation as the way to practice. And this happened definitely to me and almost happens to everybody. Then we get too attached to meditation, not seeing that like I can do things with my body and with my speech that are beneficial to others, and actually it plants a lot of good seeds into my subconscious mind, so it's easy to be present with myself. um, I can learn to view and understand things in the way that it doesn't disturb me. So for example, okay, if emotion arises, I don't go into war with it, but I'm just understanding, like you said, talked about anxiety. All emotions are telling us something. It's
Mhm.
not a myth. The only thing we need to do is observe and literally talk with them. When anxiety arises, it's like, okay, literally we can ask the anxiety, so
Yeah.
what is it that I need to see? And 10 seconds, and oh, real, okay, now I understand. But what most people do is like, anxiety, boom, go away from me, and I don't want to.
No.
And then that is the thing that disturbs us. Anxiety doesn't disturb us, attacking it does disturb us. So all that to say is, it is really I'm consciously using the word necessary to do the practice alone in meditation, and then understand that, okay, then I practice that in the world and I'm practicing. Whoops, I said a stupid thing. Okay, next time I'll do my best to do this. Whoops, I was like thinking about tomorrow's dinner for the past 3 hours. Whoops, I'll bring the mind back to not go into the typical bad performance. Why am I so whatever unmindful or something? That's not helpful.
What you explained, I've experienced a couple of times, and it usually happens when I'm super consistent with meditation more so than anything else. Because I can be
Hmm.
very consistent with writing, with creative work, but that doesn't get me to that place of expanded awareness when it comes to the
Yes.
outer world, more awareness for me. But when I meditate regularly and I go into the workplace and I go and speak with people, my field of awareness is expanded. So when I'm
Exactly.
attacked, let's say verbally, somebody tries to make a comment or somebody
Mm.
says something I don't like, it just suppresses us a little bit, but I can bounce back. And I
Yes.
remain in that state of presence where I'm in the balance and I don't necessarily react, but I'm not faking it. I am extremely
Yes.
present. It's just that I understand nothing can affect me because I have strengthened this field
Yes.
around me. And also, I don't feel the need to people please as much. I don't
Yes.
need to prove myself as much. I don't need to be perfect. I just am.
Yes.
And when I get out of the habit of meditating, I almost feel myself trying to bring that back to this place here, but because I haven't been regularly showing up
Mm.
here, and I'm like, oh my god, I can feel the energy. I can, and it's
Yes.
uncomfortable, but I understand why meditating works.
Yes.
I can be
You
myself with more ease.
you said two really important things, which is that when we meditate enough, it becomes an experience, and where a lot of people get stuck, and for example, they get into mindfulness and they hear the teacher say, just let go. Just letting go is the worst place to start in. It's really like saying to the like a child who's learning to crawl is like, go and like run a like an obstacle course. Like maybe you'll just learn to crawl first. Similar, like let when people are when there's not yet the actual experience of this spaciousness, then trying to live as if it is there is very frustrating. And med- meditation really the best way I think to describe the inner experience becomes spaces. I remember when I started meditating 16 years ago, I started noticing, wow, it's like there's this more spaces
Mhm.
inside me. And the metaphor that always comes to my mind of my experience is like it's almost as I was stuck in a sink with water. Then through the years, it became a bathtub, then a lake, and then an ocean.
Mhm.
And if you are in a sink with sharks, that's trouble. But if you're in an ocean with sharks, you really start understanding. Then it's actually okay. I can be friends with sharks. By the way, not I don't mean that people should
Not
try to be.
advocating for one play with the
Yeah,
sharks.
don't try to go be friends with sharks. But internal experience of what we would consider a shark internally or coming from outside is now it's like we see it coming 10 miles away. So just like you described, it's just it's not doesn't appear to us as a problem.
Mhm.
And it is, I think, worth knowing that meditation, I would say it is knowing also what I know from neuroscience when it comes to habit creation. Meditation is the most difficult because it literally goes directly against our strongest instincts. It's like if we are stressed, the body and the brain are like, what? You're going to sit down and close your eyes? No, you're not. Because your life is in danger. Because that's how in stress we actually experience the world. So every cell in our body is yelling and screaming, don't, you are not going to sit down and just breathe. But
Well,
if
I
you can,
think it's the ego that's screaming.
yeah,
Well, now you're gonna give up the fight? What?
mm, yeah, the ego comes, especially, yeah, that ego can come also in. If we can just stay with it for 5 minutes, it starts. The body and the brain are basically, there's a part in the left side of our frontal lobe that communicates to amygdala the state of the body, and if the muscles are relaxed and the breathing is uh, bit deeper, the signal is we are safe. Then amygdala sends signal to the body, we are safe. And now the brain is observing the body is even feels even more relaxed, we are safe. And then all the reactions disappear. It's like when we in 5 or 10 minutes relax, it's like this fog of stress that made everything look a bit dark. All of a sudden, it's like, hey, what was going on 10 minutes ago?
Mhm. And some people prolong that 10-minute window into a whole 10-year period when they're
A
stubborn. But,
lifetime.
that's how we learn. And
Yeah.
that's how your role as a mindfulness coach comes into the picture. So, why would you encourage people to pursue that path? And how do you deal with the naysayers? This is intentionally included monkey here that's kind of like
Mm,
mocking the mindfulness because we do
mm,
have these people that are like, no, I don't want to sit down. Like, I want to be out and I want to prove to this and I want to fight and I want to defend. And it's like what you explained. They're listening to the voice of reason that's guided by the monkey brain, by the
mm,
survival state, because
mm,
they're living with that preconceived notion I must protect. And the
mm.
best way I know how to protect is to fight. Uh,
Yes.
and we're seeing that division in the world because of that desire
Yes.
to fight.
Yes. Well, my most authentic answer to them is always like, okay, no problem. You don't, I'm not, that's one of the, whenever people, whether in Buddhist meditation center or not, very rarely people like that come to me. But if somebody comes with, they're trying to make me prove or make me convince them, I never try. It's like, it's okay. It's fine to me. What's interesting is that that usually annoys people enough that they start asking. It's like I remember this one person in Buddhist meditation that was grilling me very long time. Like, well, does this really work? And like, what about this and what about that? And it's like, it's up to you to see if it works. It's okay to me if you don't think it works. Like, and eventually we had like this 3 hour conversation where he left it with that he actually started meditating and all. But convincing usually doesn't work. The only that I there's one thing that I do though if people are really like that. For example, when I work with people and with leaders and they are like, no, this is all this soft stuff. I just thought here's stressed brain, and here is relaxed brain, and then comes this. But I'm not stressed, and I know that they are, and I ask them one simple question from 1 to 10. How easy is it for you to take a break during the day. 10 is happens every time, just natural, no problem. 1 is almost impossible, I just can't do it. And then 1 to 10, how easy it is for you when you get home from work. How often is your mind just kind of relaxed, open, present for your loved ones? You're doing the things you like to do, or you are thinking of work, and 1 is you're thinking of work. It just comes to your mind, and you are trying to somehow through alcohol or in some ways try to relax yourself. Just asking them to do that assessment, because that's a good way to see if you're stressed or not. If you can't take a break, likely there's some level of stress going on. So that would be to naysayers, and they are welcome to live the way they want. And those who are on the fence, like you ask, what would be those who are on the fence, I usually give them an experience without asking them to meditate. And this is also how I look for if I want to work with a client. So example would be like, Stella, if you would come to me and you would if you would say, oh, I'd want to be even more creative, but I don't know if like I don't want to I don't know how to do it, or I don't know if it's possible to me, or I'm not sure if meditation would help with it, or if which I nobody their clients, they're most of my clients, let's say 70% want to start meditation. That as a one of the habits, but let's say my main work with clients isn't to teach them meditation. That's one of the tools. Anyway, if you would be wondering about it, I would actually ask you about the creativity, and I would ask you something like, when you are really creative, what do you feel in your body? And then I go further, like, where do you feel that? And then maybe you would point to your heart, and I would ask, like, when you really relax into that feeling, what's even deeper? And that allows people to have a very quick shift, very quick experience of being connected to themselves, connected to their values, connected to a lot like stronger energies. And that's usually my way of showing like, hey, that in 5 minutes you shifted like that. So maybe these things do work. And mainly I'm saying that maybe you work. Like if you can do that in 5 minutes, it's you work. I guided you, but you experienced it. And that's also what I filter. If people have a very strong difficulty getting into their body, like no matter how much I do my best to speak in a way and be in a way that people can relax, and they are all the time saying, well, I don't really know where I feel it, or I just feel it in my head. Okay, what do you feel it in your head? Well, then and I ask them, could you name a feeling? You can use an image or anything, and they say, well, the feeling is just that, my head is full of thoughts, and that's not a feeling. That's what you're observing in your mind, because usually that means that they're so disconnected from their emotions that if I'd work with them, I would say, we need 6 months to get you actually a little bit closer to yourself, because nothing really works if you aren't connected to our emotions.
And a lot of people are finding it scary to look within.
It is.
It can be, but it can
It
also
can
be,
be. Yeah.
quite liberating. And it's important to mention that mindfulness isn't just one thing. It can be so many things. It can be done with your eyes closed. It can be done with your eyes open. It can be done
Yes.
with you being quiet. It can also be done with you talking and even moving. Mindfulness is a way of
Yes.
life, I suppose, in the long run, even if
Yes.
it starts with stillness.
Yes. It's like you can be in a movie theater. Examples count by one. Although you can be in a movie theater laughing and like, whoa, that's so amazing, and really like you can be eating popcorn, and there can be all that can happen in a stillness. Even if the body is doing it, all that can be happening in the stillness. And I wanted to go a little bit back to when I said that it's scary to look inside, and you said it can be. It's very true that it's inside. The idea about looking inside and approaching it can feel scary, but it's very illusionary. It's a
Mhm.
very illusionary fear. It disappears quite quickly. Yet, the longer we avoid of looking inside, the bigger trouble we get in, the older we get. Because if we aren't connected to ourselves, then what guides us? Then it guides some ideas of who I should be and who I shouldn't be, but we are not living from who we are. And we all know when we really aren't ourselves, our conscience or whatever you want to call it really starts nagging to us. And if we do a lot of things that aren't aligned with who we are, we don't have energy to do it. And at some point, we really lose motivation. And it becomes so unpleasant to be present with ourselves that we are going to do our everything to consume ourselves into some kind of numbness. And consuming ourselves into numbness, we might get away with it between 40 and 50 years old, but by the time we're 50, the trouble is going to really start showing up in the body. And still, it is true that it is difficult for many to look inside. Like Jung has this quote of that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, just to avoid looking into themselves.
Mhm.
And there is the study from 2014 done both to men and women, but I remember the numbers only from the men. So 55% of so women and men were given option 15 minutes in meditation. As a side note, when people don't want to meditate, I often say to them, would you be okay to sitting with yourself for 10 minutes? Just sit with yourself for 10 minutes. Don't try to do it. Don't try to do anything. Don't try to not do anything. Just be with yourself. But in this experiment, so you can sit with yourself 15 minutes, or you can give yourself an electric shock. And 55% of people chose an electric shock. Then they were given option in the meditation, they can give themselves electric shocks. 65% of men gave themselves over 4 electric shocks during the meditation because that you're facing all the stuff and you want to get something else going on.
It's the
So
control as well. You have
yeah,
the control. You know
yeah,
exactly.
right. Really good
Mhm.
point. And I think what is needed in those situations, of course, I'm very biased to say this. It's in those situations, it is useful to have a friend or a teacher or a coach who can guide you to meet yourself in a way that you can approach it from like this calm clarity. So that is very useful. Why
Mm.
it's good to have a coach or a teacher or a friend like that.
Yeah, and remember that fear is an illusion. Even if it feels real, you can
Yes,
always transform it into love
yes,
or
yeah,
excitement. It doesn't
yes,
have to be scary.
yes. See, that is what I was yesterday thinking about it again. This like I just wish so many people would experience and know this that fear is always an illusion. That it's of course there's our fears that make sense.
To keep
Like
us safe.
yeah, yes, that it makes that terrible example about it. If you are in Ukraine or in Gaza and the bombs are raining, maybe it is worth to run away. But if it's if I take that career opportunity, maybe I will maybe it will I'm not at first so competent at it. I'm earning less money, but I really would enjoy it, and people will wonder what the heck are you doing. Those are especially illusionary
Mhm.
fears, even though they come from things that make sense. They're trying to keep us safe. It's really like a fear that comes like, hey, don't go further. But there that inside we always know that. I mean, the best way to keep ourselves safe is to grow and expand.
Well, most people say the best way to keep ourselves safe is to never change because everything's familiar. And this is
Hmm.
where they start to see these pop ups say, do you want to install this new opportunity? Do you want to experience this thing? And that's
Yeah.
where they're like, oh, I'm changing. This is changing too fast. I don't know if I'm ready
Yes.
for it. But
And that
also questioning them having to face the questions from their parents and peers who are like, hey, you're changing. So initially they thought this is amazing. I want to do this opportunity. But then the friends and the parents, everyone
yes.
starts to point fingers at you. Hey, you're
Yes.
about to leave the pack. We don't like
Yes, yes, yeah, that is difficult. That is, I mean, I've left three important social groups, but I always knew that I rather like myself and be connected to myself than be approved as someone who I'm not anymore.
Yep.
And we always find a new pack if we want, or few people into the pack.
Or they will find us.
Yeah, they will find us both ways.
But because you've had the courage to pursue the path of seeking more and then becoming more and then realizing you were already everything that you needed and now teaching others how to do that as mindfulness coach, we get to unlock your earth instructions today
Oh,
and take a look at your name starting with numerology. So what's coming here as the first letter is the path 5, which is the path of creativity. So tap into your
mhm,
creative intelligence to turn the ordinary into extraordinary play. And
mhm,
5 is the number or the path that kind of talks about education, kids, playfulness, creativity. So more of the right side of the brain.
mhm,
Then in the middle, because you don't have a middle name, but the framework still remains with 3 numbers. We have almost like that fool's journey, a surprise. So
mhm,
we're gonna go back to that at the end.
that's
And then your last name, which is your way of expressing yourself and relating to the world, is the path of psychology. So use your
mhm,
ideas to help others grasp or create their own meaning in life, taking us to a number, total number 9, which is the path of higher meaning and seeking more, creating more. And it's kind of that higher education that can
mhm,
impact the adults a little bit more than the children, but
mhm,
perhaps remind them how to play a little bit more.
mhm. This matches very much when it comes to the choices I've made and what I'm curious about and what I appreciate.
Hmm. And I think creative expression or authentic expression of these big, deeply rooted into our subconscious mind ideas that psychology brings forward, that
Mhm,
might actually transform the world in a different way, in a way
mhm,
that maybe scientists aren't doing at the moment because they're still operating on the left side. They're still operating with the
yes.
data. And we need more of that open minded approach to
Mhm.
presenting the data to begin with.
Yeah, that's the aim, to translate it into something practical, something creative.
Hmm. Okay, well, that's just the first part. I've got a little
What
bit
was that?
more.
What was that? Hmm.
I've got a little bit more insight as to your earth instructions. I like to call them astrology. So we've got the 12 signs, each relating to a house, the 12 houses, which is where kind of your name also connects to these 12 houses. And your sun sign, Aquarius, is an air sign, which means you deal with a lot of information, a lot of research. Aquarius is known for being the researcher of all the signs. So you love data. Like that is just one of the encrypted messages when it comes to like Aquarius.
Mhm,
And your sun sign is also in house 5, which is the house of creativity. That's the placement here. So a creative usage of that data to bring it to more people, perhaps. Because if you just keep presenting it in the same way, you're going to be like Einstein, like trying to do the same thing but expecting your
yes.
results. And that's your higher self identity. This is kind of the mission.
Yeah. I love to constantly turn new stories, new way to explain this, new way to put this into a story. That's what I love about podcast. Like I'm always curious to see what new, like I never used movie theater metaphors before.
That's probably my higher self because I love movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Well, the difference between the sun sign and the moon sign is always here because your moon sign is your existing identity, it's your comfort zone, and it's who you will act as if you cannot rise to the full potential of the higher self. And you have Taurus in the eighth house. So this is actions speak louder than words. Doing things all the time. And every time you do those things, because it's in the eighth house, they transform you, they transform your life. But if you're just doing things and transforming on your own, you're not going to be able to bring all of that information, all of that
Mhm,
data out into the world. So it's bringing the best of both worlds together to accomplish your purpose in alignment with the instructions. And your moon sign then helps you help other people, because the moon sign works together with your south node, which is kind of your existing knowledge, what you're here to unlock and use as that inner guidance, the inner knowledge, which is Capricorn. In the third house, communication. Again, actions speak louder than words, but because this is communication, you've already mastered the act of speaking and the act of transforming your life. So you know how to guide people, how to transform their lives using the power of action. But now presenting that data and inviting them on these quests, on these journeys, that's the shift that you're here to bring. So sharing what you already know and empowering other people in a more creative way.
Mhm.
With your North Node in Cancer, ninth house, the house of higher meaning. So the way to do that is to bring that transformation to the level of their hearts. So a change of heart, quite literally. And the
Mhm.
best way to do that is to surprise them. And maybe this is kind of the interpretation of the sun
Mhm.
sign Aquarius in the fifth house, using the data in a completely different way to surprise them. And
Mhm.
that is precisely what is needed to almost trigger that awakening at the level of the
Mhm.
heart, which is a level much deeper than just the physical or just the mental. And I
Yes.
think the way that you do visualizations in particular, because we've done a couple together,
Mhm.
you bring that level of surprise to the subconscious mind quite
Mhm.
easily, starting with the conscious level.
Mhm. Thank you.
Rising sign, this is your communication style. How are you going to connect with the rest of the world? Libra, one of the talkative signs. So, communication, using that ability to engage people in conversations, much like the dialogues of Socrates, to bring
Mhm.
back the ancient Greek times. And Venus sign is your love language. How are you going to form bonds with others on a deeper level? So these are your most trusted advisors, your business partners, and even
Mhm.
the people that you're going to work with at the people that you're going to be able to impact the most. And these are people that are wired for self growth.
Mhm.
So that's your soul tribe. People that want to transform, but not to the extent that you do, because you already have that eighth house of transformation, which is deep rebirth, almost type of transformation every few years. Self growth is I am committed to follow a routine that allows me to unlock more of my potential consistently. And these are your people. Any
Mhm.
surprises? No surprises.
No, 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 no surprise. The self growth part is more the Venus sign, the Pisces is something that is one of those things that I was aware but wasn't aware,
Mhm.
and this kind of like, yeah, right, it's like that for me.
And because it's Pisces, it's not just an earth sign. An earth sign is someone that changes with their actions, and it's quite easy to have them as accountability partners, to do
Mm,
things with them. When it comes to self growth at the level of the air, that's people that you can discuss ideas with, that you can
mm,
brainstorm with. So you're always changing your minds about things and expanding.
mm,
With Pisces, this is almost like a person that is ready to do the deep inner work to keep upgrading their heart chakra.
mm,
And I'm using those words because I feel like you're going to understand what I'm talking about. The heart
yes,
chakra is essentially always there, but sometimes it gets clogged because of
yes,
disappointments, because of betrayals, heartache, and some
mm,
people make the time and space to clear it so that they can
mm,
love with even more impact into the world. And I
yes,
think this is the type of self growth that
mm,
these are your people that you can
yes, I
not
can
necessarily
see that.
conquer the world with, but conquer the
Mm,
world stages to deliver these messages
mm,
with. And to put it all into perspective, the path of higher meaning is the overall umbrella.
mm,
You're here to tap into the creative intelligence of the universe so you can become one of its messengers on earth and play with the information that's already available, that's constantly there, but maybe people are just not paying attention. Or
mm,
maybe they're paying attention, but they don't understand it. It's not able to reach their hearts the way that it's
mm,
meant to in order for them to actually transform.
mm,
The middle part, which is kind of the surprise, the fool's journey, is you're here to be a bit of a transformation guide, but only to those that are ready to do the work. We're not
Mm,
forcing people, we're inviting them. So let your creative intelligence be channeled into resources that can uplift and educate purpose driven leaders, which is where I think communication paired up with Capricorn, but also Taurus, like two earth
mhm,
signs. These are physical things, the way that I
mhm,
interpret them. When you create the resources, when you create the places, the workshops, the invitations, those that are ready are going to show up and you've done your part. And finally, with your communication, how you're going to present yourself to the world, especially that being psychology, you're on a mission to be a self mastery kind of role model to the world
mhm.
because that is what excites you. So when you lead by example, you encourage others to believe in themselves as much as you
Mhm.
do. Because the goal isn't to get people glued to you as the role model, but to remind them that they can be role
Yeah,
models in their own
exactly.
lives. So that's that. These are your earth instructions,
Well,
Nikki.
it's so interesting. Always, like I always say, well, I don't know if those things really work, but every time this is probably the most profound that, lack of a better word, been done to me. But they're always like, damn, that's really like nailed me. That's kind of that's how I am. And those are the things that I appreciate. That's how I think. That's how I operate. Those are the things that are, when I look at these things and everything you share this, those are things that are kind of obvious, natural, and default to me.
I'm sure it's taking you some time to get to know them, as one
Yes.
does. So my theory, or rather my mission, is to bring this to people as young as possible. If it can help
Mm,
them to live with more peace as to who they are, because I think one of the aspects that block us from living peacefully is accepting who we are, that
mm,
authentic acceptance.
yes.
And mindfulness can help us.
Yeah, definitely. The kind of acceptance that actually accepts, and not the kind of acceptance that is, if I accept you, will you go away? Because that's very often how people approach accepting emotions.
Mhm.
If
Well,
I
one last
accept you, you'll stop making trouble, stop
that's
being
the
yourself.
conditional. If there is an
Yeah,
if, that's conditional.
yes. And also it says, I accept you if you aren't the way you are.
Yeah. Manipulation.
Yes.
If you didn't know, this is manipulation.
Yeah, and how, and yeah, there's so much to say even about that relationship with the very strange, the very strange thing of how we don't see how our relationship, how we perceive our emotions. I don't know if we have time for that. We don't need to go into that, but I find that to be really interesting.
I will mention one thing, and I'll leave the final word to you. So
Mm,
I feel like this is going to be an important lesson for anyone that's watching or listening. But one thing to mention is one is not born into their purpose, one steps into their purpose, and it's your choices. So when I say soul purpose, I mean you are literally hardwired to be a positive change maker on earth. And it doesn't matter how corrupted the world you've witnessed firsthand or on the television. It doesn't matter how much manipulation you've experienced or even caused. You can always change for the better, and you can always become that
mm,
messenger that brings higher meaning, that leads with love, and it's your actions. You
mhm.
have to remember that you always have free choice, you always have free
Yes.
will, and you can change for the better. And when you
Mhm.
know your earth instructions, the shift can be a little bit easier.
Yes.
This is just one of those tools. Nikki, you have
I'll go from there. What you said, actually, from this, that we are not born into our purpose, we can step into it, and it seems like pretty much everyone has this sense of intuition about there's some purpose, there's some meaning. It's one of our strongest instincts, even, and we can overcomplicate it so much by thinking that it's hidden somewhere. But if we are really honest with ourselves, it is all the times there speaking to us. Say that. Don't say that. Take that opportunity. Don't cover away from it. It's like all the time present there. To step in. It's basically we are all the time invited to do it. It's not in some mysterious place. It's all the time. We all know that there's this whisper, this inner knowing of, like, when I work with clients and they're making this difficult decision, I often ask them, like, I'm pretty sure you actually know the answer to this. So if you wouldn't need to make a decision, if you knew that there was, if you didn't have any fear, what would you choose? Everybody's like, I would do this. So because we know, and so it is very simple, and only the step can be a bit scary, because it seems like we're stepping into the unknown, but with every step the path is a bit more illuminated from the front, and nothing is more painful to not do that. And we know it by that we will cover it, we'll do anything except to experience ourselves. I would say even some level, every time we know that this would be important and meaningful, that this is authentic, and we don't do it, we are partly observing ourselves as a coward, and that feels terrible. And so in some level, it's almost some level is to be afraid of the right thing. I'm really scared of, as I've many times I made big changes. Almost every 4 years there's a bigger step that I'm stepping out of the comfort zone. It seems to be 4 years. Really, if I no matter how much I track back, it's always 4 years. And I'm always scared to do it, like really scared to do it, but I'm a lot more scared of not doing it. And the maybe ending it with this is that many of us know the famous book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying People, and the number one is why didn't I live the life? Why didn't I live more of my life? And we might think that it's somewhere there, and it's not us, but it really can be us. We can end there, but and it's a really good perspective in some way to realize, well, it might be a bit harsh perspective, but at least whether we believe that there's endless lives and whatever we believe, still, whether we believe that we'll just disappear, still in all of those cases, we know that this life will come to the end. And we are not going to be like, oh, I'm so glad I like survived longer by not being myself. Like none of us will say that. And also it's so interesting in relation to that exactly regret is that when with clients or with people, when you go really deep with them, when they really relax, get connected with themselves, everybody says the same thing. Like what's most important is to be myself. And it's very, if one thinks about it, what a weird thing, because so why would that be a regret at the end of my life? Why would it be a regret that I didn't live my life? What, in some level you could say, what does it matter at that point? And yet it is deep regret. Why do people want to be themselves ultimately? Like what does that, we might as well just not have that instinct. We could just be lying and betraying ourselves, but we actually want to be ourselves. And maybe this really plays into your earth instructions. And our mission is that my theory, like people don't need to believe it, but I think that the reason why we want so much deep down to be ourselves and we regret so much not being ourselves, because deep down we know that that was our part to play. Nobody else can play that part, and it would be really important for others. And that's why it is probably the deepest instinct we have, is to be ourselves.
And it's to take it a step further. We want to be seen and loved for who we are,
Yes.
not for the idea,
Yes.
not for the performance, but for who we truly are. And if you know that you haven't been honest, or if you know that you've accepted less than you deserve because you're surrounded by people who cannot see you, and you know, when people see you for who you are, you know, and when people can't see you for who you are, as much as you're giving them chance after chance, they can't. And you have
Yes.
to make peace with that and just let them be, because they have other people to love and to love them, and you have
Yeah.
somebody to love you just as you are. And I've experienced that, and I've seen that with other people. Some people think, "Oh, I'm not good enough," and other people think I'm too much. These are the same. It's the same polarity.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
You're
wrap
not
it.
too much and you are just enough. It's just that maybe your journey requires of you to spend more time on your own mindfulness before you meet those people that can celebrate you and co-create
Mm,
with you. Because this isn't just about finding your people and finding your place and doing nothing. This is about co-creating. We're still bringing it
mm,
back to action, even if
mm,
our wiring is more to be heart-led and spirit-led. We
mm.
still need to create something. It's our choices, it's our actions
Yes.
that change the world.
Yes.
We're all positive change makers. Thank you for joining me on Born to Do It, Nikki,
Thank
and
you,
for
Stella. Thank
leading the
you.
mindfulness revolution.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have you one more time just to talk about mindfulness because it's such a fascinating
Yeah,
topic.
there's we can have endless amount of conversation about that.
Thank you for watching and